He realized he had died and awakened in another world, carrying the memories of a poor, unwanted 31-year-old life. Before he could make sense of any of it, terror crashed over him when he felt something was already going horribly wrong. As he tumbled through darkness, he cried out for help, convinced his second life might end before it had even begun. Then he found himself face to face with a female warrior named Risa, and the nightmare only deepened. Staring at the woman, he nervously wondered if she really was a female warrior. After taking it in, he accepted that this truly was another world and muttered that it hardly mattered anymore. He remembered waking in an unknown place about an hour earlier as some kind of strange animal, while unbearable hunger tore through him. When he spotted others that looked like his own kind, he moved toward them with hope, thinking they might accept him. But the instant he got close, horror locked his body when he saw those creatures were attacking humans. When the savage creatures noticed him and began chasing him, panic hit as he realized he would be next. He tried to run and quickly understood this unfamiliar body made escape almost impossible. When one of the creatures caught him, he lashed out in blind panic, crying in pain and struggling to survive. The struggle sent him hurtling off a cliff, his scream tearing through the air as he fell. He slammed into a tree on the way down, leaving his body broken and barely able to move. In despair, he thought he had no place anywhere, not even in this world. As he lay there, certain his brief second life was already ending, he begged the female warrior for help. He looked up and saw Risa standing over him in full battle stance, and his breath stopped. To Rasa's eyes, he was nothing but a vicious monster that preyed on humans. Accepting his fate, he decided that if he was going to die by that female warrior's hand, then so be it. Even then, he kept insisting to himself that he had never meant to attack humans. As Risa faced him, she paused when she thought she heard him speak. She right away rejected the thought and told herself that desk orcs could not talk. Elsewhere, a report explained that police found the body of Mr. Yasao's eldest son after a neighbor heard a loud explosion from the Kohei family residence. Investigators stated that Mr. Yasao had been alone in the house, where his room contained a PC, a 3D printer, and numerous model guns. The report added that he had acquired blueprints and materials online and used them to build a homemade pistol before it exploded. It was concluded that the blast caused acute heart failure and ended his life in a grim, pitiful way. A mysterious presence admitted it did not know what to say, then offered him a second chance. The being proposed blessing him with an attribute that would bind him to guns more than anyone else, which only left him more confused. He refused that offer and decided he wanted something else entirely. Rather than devotion to guns, he wished to be loved by someone, and that lonely desire became his final request. Risa explained that the bath was made with care herb and could even heal sword wounds. The small creature realized he was somehow still alive and stared in shock. When Risa all of a sudden noticed him moving and reacting, she screamed and nearly dropped him in surprise. As he weakly tried to speak, only broken sounds about his body came out, leaving Risa even more unsettled. Risa steadied herself and faced him carefully, still trying to understand what she had just witnessed. In disbelief, Risa admitted that he could actually speak, while he pointed out that she had not attacked him and had even stayed to treat his wound. He promised he would not attack humans, and Risa explained that he really was a desk orc, and that the food she gave him was a mix of berries and tree sap syrup. After finishing the treatment, Risa told him she had applied a healing salve and that it should close the wound. Grateful for her help, he thanked her deeply and respectfully called her a female warrior. Risa told him to call her Rasa, then asked for his name. He explained that the one before her had died, so for now he had no name, and he politely asked Risa to give him one. Risa decided that since he was soft and fluffy, his name would be Mofuo, and he accepted it even if the reason felt a little silly. Delighted by the name, Risa told Mofuo to stay there until his wound fully healed, while he hesitantly asked how he could repay her kindness. Risa right away refused any repayment and said there was only one thing she wanted, which left Mofuo confused. With tears in her eyes and strange agitation rising inside her, Risa admitted that what she wanted was to keep Mofuo close, and he sensed something intense behind it. As Risa reached toward him and repeated his name with excitement, Mofuo could only stare in puzzled silence. When bedtime came, Risa told him to sleep with her on the bed because he was injured, brushing aside his attempt to sleep on the floor. Mofuo agreed if she truly did not mind, but then noticed that Risa had already fallen asleep. The moment he lay beside her, Risa instinctively pulled him into her arms and held him tight like a treasured plush toy. Trapped in her sleeping embrace, and the scene grows awkward with no easy escape. Held tightly in Risa's arms, Mofuo realized she felt deeply soothed by staying close to him and had not felt that calm in a very long time. A month passed, and Risa now walked beside Mofuo as his recovery period finally came to an end. Mofuo noted that his wound had completely healed thanks to Miss Risa's care, though his fluffy body still left him unable to wear clothes. Even so, he had grown used to walking around as he was and no longer needed to stay near the house. As they approached the city, Raza warned Mofuo they were entering town, while he quietly reacted as her movement jostled him in an awkward way. Raza fastened a leash to Mofuo, and he explained that his species was seen as a dangerous monster that attacked and ate humans. She led him through the city on that leash so the townspeople would not panic, and Mofuo accepted it since he was already used to it. A cheerful woman greeted Mofuo good morning and asked Raisa if she could touch him, and Raisa allowed it. As the woman hugged and adored Mofuo for being unbelievably cute, Raisa silently wondered whether someone like him could really frighten people. Watching Mofuo get showered with affection, Raisa grew visibly irritated while the woman kept gushing over how adorable he was. The woman happily held Mofuo close and said she was having fun, while Mofuo grew visibly uncomfortable and admitted this kind of attention was not for him. Mofuo decided her behavior was not truly dangerous and figured her unusual fixation was surfacing only in a harmless, overly affectionate way. Raisa flusteredly insisted it was not like she actually wanted Mofuo for herself, but the teasing reply trapped her at once. Regaining her composure, Raisa walked off and said she would return in the evening. Left behind by the door, Mofuo simply answered her with a quiet reply. As Raisa headed off, Mofuo explained that Miss Raisa worked as a female warrior and had gone to the guild for recruitment. Mofuo reflected that this really did feel like a typical RPG-style isekai, and he wanted to help with her quest instead of remaining a burden as a small monster she had to carry. At a workshop, a lively young woman called Mofuo over to help with the job, while another woman reminded her not to call herself boss because it did not suit someone so young. Mofuo learned the cheerful girl was named Cosette and that she was the best blacksmith in town, while he privately wondered how she had somehow reacted to his inner thoughts. Cosette explained that she was allowed to work at the shop so she could earn money to support herself, then energetically demanded more raw materials as Mofuo obeyed. Mofuo carried more materials for Cosette and realized that iron did exist in this world, though it seemed to be used only after melting. When Mofuo picked up one strange buried object, he stared at it in disbelief and realized it was a gun, no matter how bizarre it looked. He noted that nobody in this world even had a concept of guns, and since these relics seemed buried from an ancient civilization, no one understood what they were. Cosette treated the relics as materials from a magically advanced lost civilization, but when she tested one, its temperature plunged and she identified its property as ice. The peaceful work shattered when a woman was seized by a massive attacker, and the town erupted into panic as people screamed that the orcs had arrived. As another victim cried for help, word spread that a group of orcs had launched a raid on the town. The townspeople froze in shock, then shouted for everyone to hide their families at once while wondering where the attackers had come from. Mofuo asked what those creatures were, and Cosette urgently told him they were orcs and ordered him to hurry inside and hide. Cosette warned that the orcs targeted women and killed anyone who got in their way, leaving Mofuo shaken. Before the orcs could push any farther, armed townsmen stepped forward and ordered them to stop. The armed townsmen stepped forward, condemned the invaders for attacking their city, and vowed to fight to the death. The crowd placed its hopes on the warrior guild, praising the guild fighters as the city's trusted defenders. Mofuo asked why the monster extermination experts were not moving, and Cosette coldly told him to keep watching. One orc flaunted a captured woman and taunted the humans to try resisting. The townsmen could only curse the orcs from a distance, and their hesitation exposed the fear gripping them. The orcs sneered at the humans' weakness and took advantage of their inability to act. When Mofuo demanded to know why the heroes were doing nothing, Cosette told him the answer was obvious. Cosette explained that the guild could not make a move because the orcs were using hostages, and she added that this also protected the guild's reputation. The others agreed as Cosette pointed out that the orcs would keep ravaging the city anyway, so the excuse changed nothing. As the orcs paraded their captives and mocked the city's failed protection, one desperate victim begged George to save her before she was dragged away. Mofuo saw a group approaching outside the gate, and the sight made the crisis feel all of a sudden closer and far worse. He recognized Ms. Raisa charging ahead in fury, and her sudden appearance stunned him. Raisa burned with anger and declared the situation unforgivable. As Raisa rushed out alone, a bystander panicked that charging in like that was suicide, while Mofuo protested that she was only one powerless fighter. Far from the city, Raisa was led into an enemy camp where several monsters had gathered around a crater-like shelter. Hidden among the rough walls, frightened captives watched as Raisa was brought before the monsters. One of the monsters said they should take her somewhere else, making the danger around Raisa feel even closer. Surrounded and restrained, Raisa was singled out by the monsters as a warrior they wanted to deal with next. Even while trembling with fear and sweat, Raisa glared back and begged to be killed instead. The monster coldly refused and insisted that Raisa would remain with him. The creature glared at Raisa like she was trapped, and disgust rose in her throat until she thought she might break. Humiliated and shaking with rage, Raisa fought his grip and spat that he was filth beyond saving. She said he had killed her comrade, and through that fury swore she would kill him even if it cost her life. The creature sneered at her defiance, pointed out that her legs would not move, and treated even her resistance like a game. Raisa shot back that she would never submit to something like him. He answered with even crueler taunts, pressing the fear around Raisa deeper. Overwhelmed by shame and panic, Raisa begged him not to look at her. Shaking on the verge of breaking, she pleaded for him to stop and begged him to kill her already. The creature refused without hesitation, saying he would break her spirit first and only then allow her to die. Then, in a single instant, his head burst apart from a sudden shot, cutting everything off mid-attack. A bound woman stared in shock as one pig monster's head burst apart, and the others panicked, trying to grasp what had hit him. Another monster snapped toward the source, but a second shot struck his head before he could react. The unseen sniper kept firing without pause, and even while hanging restrained, the woman could only watch the monsters fall one after another. As bodies dropped around him, one surviving monster checked his comrades in panic, then finally lost his nerve and ran. He never got far, as a long-range shot struck his head while the captive woman watched the impossible rescue unfold. Through a sniper scope, the distant shooter confirmed the area was clear and finally exhaled. The shooter was revealed as a small bear-like figure holding an AW-50 rifle, proudly noting that even targets beyond 2 kilometers were easy for him. With the monsters gone, the woman strained against her restraints and snapped the bindings around her wrists. The bear-like sniper coolly bragged that if love for guns meant anything, and the interaction becomes difficult to navigate. He reflected that in a world where no one even knew guns existed, he alone carried one. Raza insisted that what had happened to her was no kindness, and said she still had one move left. Then she marched straight into a guild building, as if her decision had already hardened. Inside, the adventurers recognized her as Raisa and muttered that she had vanished after the earlier horde, with one of them bluntly calling her an idiot. At the counter, the receptionist warned that if Raisa had somehow made it back alive, she should stay quiet, because no lone fighter should have survived that many orcs. Raisa flammed down proof of the massive orc horde that had attacked the town and said she had come to collect every coin of the reward. She demanded full payment for wiping out the horde, even asking whether part of it could be paid in silver and copper. The entire tavern erupted in disbelief, and the adventurers argued that a horde that size should have required at least 2 platoons. Raisa calmly said she had not fought alone, and the stunned receptionist listened as she revealed someone had backed her up with long-range magic. A man repeated her words in disbelief, and Raisa clarified that whoever helped her had attacked from over 15 kilometers away and never showed his face. Far away in the forest, the small bear-like sniper panted beside his massive rifle, revealing who had truly provided that long-range support. Mofuo tried to catch up as Raisa forced her way down the hill, but she had already put 3 kilometers between them. He shrugged it off and guessed she had obviously gone to the guild. On the way there, 2 monsters spotted Mofuo, while he casually figured Raisa was probably inside collecting her reward. When he saw more of the creatures, Mofuo realized they had already decided he was easy prey. He raised his gun and coldly told the monsters to listen carefully. Mofuo declared that his aim never missed, then opened fire at once and dropped the charging monsters. Standing among the bodies, and the moment takes an uncomfortable turn. Back at the guild, the receptionist calculated that Raisa's payment would total 60,000 gold, and Raisa thanked her. A female adventurer gaped and said 60,000 was enough to feast for years, then asked if Raisa really planned to carry all of it herself. From behind, Raisa reminded them that someone had mentioned long-range magic earlier, making it clear she was not done yet. A man demanded to know what nonsense Raisa was talking about, but she answered him with a cold stare. Raisa said he truly had no idea, then explained that all they knew was that a single strike had shattered an orc skull instantly. The guildmaster Bisharo flatly refused to believe her and said he had never heard of magic like that. Bisharo argued that even he could barely drive orcs back and insisted those monsters were far from weak. Raisa fired back that he was the one claiming they had defeated them all, and said no such convenient magic existed. Bisharo accused Raisa of trying to deceive the guild and mocked her story. The argument turned physical as Bisharo stepped in close to intimidate her, but Raisa did not yield an inch. Raisa exposed him, saying she had a score to settle because while he acted powerful in public, he had hidden behind closed doors during the orc attack. Bisharo froze and asked what she had just said, clearly shaken by the accusation. A nearby adventurer bluntly backed it up, and the situation shifts into territory no one prepared for. The room turned against Raisa as furious adventurers demanded proof and insisted she stop spreading what they called slander. Before the mob could rush her, one man told the others to stay calm and said they could not ignore someone insulting their boss. The crowd rallied even harder behind Bisharo, swearing they would not let the accusation stand and praising him as their town's hero. Bisharo played the calm leader, saying he understood their anger, but urging them not to lose control while painting Raisa as a fraud. Raisa fired back instantly and declared that Bisharo was the one cheating the guild and that every word from his mouth was a lie. A scarred man all of a sudden seized Raisa from behind and forced her around, pushing the confrontation to the brink as the room closed in. He claimed this was the proof, dragging everyone's eyes to the huge scar across Raisa's back. He said any real adventurer would recognize that mark, and the situation becomes awkward. The man shamed Raisa in front of everyone, claiming that when things turned bad she had abandoned her companions and run. The others piled on, saying no one would trust a teammate who deserted allies, and mocked Raisa as the kind who survived by sacrificing others. Raisa snapped that no sane adventurer would ever team up with a two-faced coward like him, and told Bisharo to stop hiding behind talk of magic. A hulking man mocked the room for missing the real threat, while Mofuo revealed he was already there with a weapon aimed at them. The men looked around in confusion at first, then dismissed Mofuo as some tiny nobody in the doorway. As they laughed at the small intruder, one thug all of a sudden realized this was the same creature who had been tagging along with Raisa. Mofuo coldly warned the thug that the next second was going to hurt. In an instant, Mofuo fired and hit the thug hard, dropping him with a vicious shot. The man crashed face first and cried out in pain, and the entire room froze at the sudden attack. While the thug writhed and shouted from the hit, another adventurer stepped forward with a knife and demanded to know what trick had just been used. Mofuo stared him down and mocked him for bringing a knife against a gun. The knife man panicked and wondered if this was some kind of long-range magic, but Mofuo calmly said he had only fired one shot and told him to relax. Mofuo leveled the gun and calmly explained that this was not magic at all, just force. The hooded man recoiled in shock as Mofuo all of a sudden closed the distance with the weapon. The hooded man realized too late that Mofuo had used his spellcasting delay against him and admitted he still needed time. Before the bald attacker could bring his blade down, Mofuo fired upward and dropped him with another brutal shot. The blast tore through the men in a line, making both attackers cry out as they stumbled from the impact. Mofuo condemned them as trash for preying on women and warned them to be grateful he had held back. As the wounded men fled carrying their injured companion, they yelled that Mofuo would regret this, and he answered with a mocking insult. Realizing the one who had rescued her was him, Raisa told Mofuo that he had been the one who saved her back then. Mofuo called out to Raisa and told her that once she got her money, they should go home together. Raisa was caught off guard, then firmly promised that from now on she would stay at Mofuo's side no matter what. Raisa turned to Mofuo in surprise as he stood there with his gun, and she quietly said his name. Mofuo asked for a moment, and the guild staff right away came forward with formal gratitude. The guild representative thanked Mofuo for eliminating both the orc threat and Bisharo's gang from their town. Mofuo said nothing, and his face hardened as he reflected that the town had only started declining after Bisharo arrived. The guild offered Mofuo a reward and urged him and Raisa to stay, eat, and drink freely for the night, promising to treat everyone there as well. The whole room burst into celebration at the words, "free alcohol," and the moment takes an uncomfortable turn. Raisa smiled warmly and said they should accept. Later, after the feast, someone cheerfully admitted he was completely full. Mofuo, flushed and unsteady, marveled that desk workers could apparently handle anything and even found the local booze surprisingly good. The alcohol hit him hard, and as he staggered in a haze, he called to Raisa and said it was time to sleep. Mofuo steadied himself, and the scene grows awkward with no easy escape. As Raisa moved to support him, Mofuo insisted he could get in by himself and did not need her help. Seeing the marks on her back, Mofuo anxiously wondered if those scars had come from her trying to run away before. The moment Mofuo entered with her, Raisa jolted and froze as the situation all of a sudden became far more awkward. Raisa noticed Mofuo was completely drunk and in no state to manage alone, while Mofuo inwardly felt relieved he had barely avoided making it worse. Mofuo thanked Raisa for everything she had done for him that day. Raisa, flustered by his honesty, worried that she might have acted strangely, while Mofuo felt unsettled in a way he had never known before, even in his past life. Looking back, Mofuo realized that day had probably been the true turning point. He brushed it off as nothing serious, properly introduced himself to Raisa, and later reflected that this was the real beginning of their path toward becoming the world's strongest party. At the inn, when someone asked what he wanted, Mofuo simply requested some milk. Raisa brushed off the bartender's concern and pointed to the sign that promised food and drink, making it clear she wasn't leaving. A large man laughed at Raisa for ordering milk in a bar and tried to shame her into drinking alcohol instead. Raisa shut him down cold, saying she would drink what she pleased and telling him to get lost. The man and his companions only pushed further, turning it into open harassment meant to humiliate her. Raisa answered with a brutal kick that sent the man flying, and the situation reaches a point neither of them expected. Outside the bar, Raisa stayed utterly calm, told them to pour the drink already, and casually wondered if the rumors had spread that far. One of the men recognized her as the female warrior, Raisa, and confirmed that her name was already all over town. Raisa realized with pride that people were talking about how she had wiped out an entire orc horde by herself. Nearby, Mofuo listened and nervously reminded himself that once he drew his gun, he would only get one shot to make it count. As Mofuo reflected that he was basically a weapon user who had to commit the instant he moved, someone all of a sudden stepped up behind him. Risa caught Mofuo hesitating and told him to stay hidden in the house for now, but admitted she wanted to fix that weakness if he was going to protect her. To test his aim, Mofuo drew his gun and fired at a row of bottles, trying to prove he could act the second it mattered. The dark-haired elf woman appeared behind him without warning, teasing that he was full of surprises, while Mofuo proudly said he was not there yet, but his quick draw had definitely improved. Mofuo was thrown off by how striking she was, lost focus for a heartbeat, and scrambled to get himself under control. The woman watched him with open interest, said she had never seen anything like this, and demanded to know what kind of magic he was using. Mofuo froze and tried to answer, but he clearly had no idea how to explain himself. The instant she understood, the woman burst into disbelief and shouted that he was actually a desk orc. She snapped into a fighting stance, accused him of using magic to imitate a human, and warned that she would not be fooled. Mofuo dropped the pretense, told her to come at him, and boasted that keeping her distance had been her mistake because he had trained for this. He fired in rapid bursts, and the woman was hammered by the barrage before she could close in. The dark-haired elf woman rushed him anyway and was shocked that Mofuo was still standing after taking the hit. Mofuo lunged forward in panic as the dark-haired elf woman's heavy strike tore past him with brutal force. Crushed against the ground, Mofuo admitted she was absurdly tough and regretted not using that trick on her party earlier. Before the dark-haired elf woman could attack again, a sudden voice cut in and ordered her to stop. She turned and found the horned female fighter standing behind her, and the air changed instantly. The horned female fighter locked eyes with her and declared that Mofuo was under her protection. The dark-haired elf woman protested in disbelief, insisting the strange creature was a desk orc and demanding an explanation. The horned female fighter all of a sudden rushed her, and the dark-haired elf woman barely got her guard up in time. Watching the charge, the dark-haired elf woman realized the horned female fighter was coming at her with overwhelming power. A split second later, the dark-haired elf woman understood she had reacted too late to cleanly avoid the blow. The horned female fighter met the dark-haired elf woman's strike with magic guard, and the elf was startled that her defense actually held. The dark-haired elf woman recognized the horned female fighter's monstrous raw strength and likened her to a beast. The horned female fighter answered with a crushing counter that sent violent force surging straight back into her opponent. The dark-haired elf woman endured it and dug in, realizing she was dealing with someone incredibly tough. The horned female fighter finally realized this female warrior was no ordinary opponent and treated her as a real threat. With the horned female fighter closing the distance again, the dark-haired elf woman abruptly surrendered and raised both hands. She introduced herself as Erica Hardrock and apologized for calling Mofuo a desk orc. The horned female fighter remained wary, but accepted that Erica had not known Mofuo was her comrade and asked to end it there. Mofuo, battered on the ground, assured them he was still alive and admitted Erica had only tossed him around with her land-based combat technique. Holding Mofuo, the horned female fighter realized this had to be Risa, the warrior rumored to have wiped out an entire orc horde alone. Rasa corrected Erica and revealed that the one who had really taken down the orcs was Mofuo. Hearing that, Mofuo nervously decided he needed to stay away from direct fights with dangerous martial artists from now on. Erica accepted that there had been a misunderstanding, but bluntly said she still was not apologizing for calling him a desk orc. Left alone inside, Mofuo waited anxiously and prayed no one would mistake him for food. Risa calmly assured the others that Mofuo never attacked humans and told them not to worry. As a woman with long black hair tested the bath, she noticed the water was filled high, and Mofuo all of a sudden felt unbelievably lucky. When she invited him over too, Mofuo froze on the spot as the bath invitation hit him all at once. Mofuo leaped into the tub in a burst of panic, splashing water everywhere and startling the black-haired woman. As he bumped awkwardly against her in the water, she seemed surprised at first, then admitted he was actually kind of harmless. Mofuo kept crowding in out of nervous confusion, and the flustered black-haired woman protested while trying to push him away. Mio Sakurazawa wondered if Mofuo thought she was a female desk orc, then teasingly imagined how he would react to a joke, and noticed his attention had drifted in a way that left even her confused. Outside, Mio confirmed that the man she was hunting was Don Cordderero, a notorious underworld figure with a massive bounty on his head. Reisa admitted humans were not really her field because she specialized in slaying monsters, while Mio accepted that and explained that Cordderero was the criminal holding the underworld together. Mio clenched her fist and revealed that she had finally found a trail leading to that man. She explained that she was a lone bounty hunter and, in simple terms, Don Cordderero was the prey she had come for. Reisa wished her luck, but Mio stopped her and said this was not a job she could do alone. Mio admitted she needed backup and it had to be a woman. Rasa stayed silent as Mio said she had heard Rasa once brought down an orc, then added that even if Rasa was not ideal for splitting the bounty, her skill was obvious. The two looked down from a rocky overlook and surveyed the sprawling compound and the caravan traffic below, measuring the danger. Mio pointed out the distant caravan and explained that locating it had been the first step in the plan. Mio was stunned to learn the caravan mascot could talk, and Mofuo reminded her he had spoken when they first met even if she had ignored it. Mofuo explained that the caravan constantly broke down and rebuilt its structures whenever it moved, so infiltration was the only realistic option despite the cost in money and labor. Mio told Ryasa she could see Ryasa hated the plan, but insisted she only needed her to watch her back while she handled the filthy part. Mio brushed off Ryasa's concern about the scar on her back so casually that even Mofuo wondered if she had hit her head. Ryasa finally agreed, and Mio encouraged her by saying Erika would be there too, which drew an approving response from Mofuo. When Mio pushed to slip inside right away, Mofuo could only stare in disbelief as he tried to process what she meant. At the entrance, the men welcomed them as dancers and complained that they had taken long enough to show up. Mio played the part smoothly and said it was all for the money, while a tense Ryasa worried the outfit was barely staying in place and Mio told her to endure it. Ryasa hesitated, but Mio pushed her to act the part and keep moving, leaving Ryasa rattled and unsure. Once inside, the pair saw women already arranged in the room, and the sight made Ryasa stop cold. Mio recoiled at the overpowering stench and covered her face as the smell nearly shattered her focus. Fighting through the dizziness, Mio told Ryasa to stay with her and forced herself onward despite feeling faint. Ryasa saw Mio was struggling, but said that was actually perfect, then warned that their mark was just ahead. Ryasa led Mio deeper inside and quietly pointed out that the target was waiting further in. The guard stopped them right away and said no one had been permitted inside, making Mio and Ryasa tense at once. One guard called for dawn and announced that the dancers had arrived, while another ordered that they be sent in. Inside, the two faced a gigantic, monstrous boss who gleefully said he had been eager to watch human girls perform, and the room instantly felt suffocating. Mio was horrified by the creature's sheer size, while Ryasa stayed composed and respectfully confirmed that this monster was Don Cordderero. Straining through the darkness, Mio muttered that she could barely see the enemy, and Ryasa assured her eyes would adjust soon. As her vision cleared, Mio said she could make him out now, though what stood before them still shook her. Don Cordderero stared down at the two and demanded to know whether they were lackeys or fighters, probing why they had been brought before him. Mio admitted to Ryasa that she probably should have warned her first, then said Erika had understood the situation and claimed she had a plan that might actually work. Mio revealed that the plan was to strike Cordderero directly, asked for Rysa's help, promised to split the bounty, and then realized the monster wanted them to dance. Ryasa reluctantly gave in, and the two started performing while the room watched in silence. Mio quietly praised Ryasa's composure and said the practice had paid off, trying to steady her under all that pressure. Even as Ryasa told herself she was in no state to dance, her body kept moving on its own and forced her through it. The crowd reacted crudely to Ryasa's performance, making the room feel even more humiliating and dangerous. Ryasa kept going while inwardly wondering what was happening and why she had been dragged into this. Don Cordderero interrupted and declared that their outfits were getting in the way, then bluntly ordered them to remove them. Mio turned to Ryasa and said she heard him too, then coldly told her to do it. Ryasa hesitated, red with discomfort, but forced herself to agree. The crowd roared with crude approval, and the humiliation pressing down on Ryasa only got worse. Don Cordderero let out a satisfied laugh, clearly enjoying every second of it. Ryasa kept going even as the pressure of the room made her movements falter. One of the monsters all of a sudden recognized Ryasa as the one who had wiped out his orc allies. It then identified her as the female warrior they had all been talking about. The creature admitted that Mio Sakurazawa had been right to seek help, because that help had led them straight to Don Cordderero. Mio Sakurazawa confirmed it without hesitation, making it clear she had used the whole setup to get close to Cordderero. The monster recoiled in shock as Don Cordderero reacted, caught off guard by the sudden shift in the room. Mio Sakurazawa finally revealed the truth, declaring that Don Cordderero had been luring dancers in only to devour them. Mofuo lay on a hillside above Don Corddero's compound, watching from extreme range without a blink. He stayed perfectly still behind the rifle, careful not to give away even the slightest trace of his position. As he waited, he studied the barren ground and the caravan's strange defenses, trying to grasp why anyone would build like that in the middle of nowhere. The longer he watched, the more Mofuo became convinced the answer had to be magic. He reasoned that this world had attack spells powerful enough to blast through walls and hit targets hiding behind them. He also knew that cover could become a trap in a magical ambush, handing enemy casters places to conceal themselves. Because of that, guarding the entrance in the open actually made more sense, especially against anyone trying to slip in unseen. To Mofuo, the caravan's layout all of a sudden matched this world's dangers perfectly, not sloppy at all, but built around one fatal threat. Even so, he noted that the whole strategy only worked if this world had never faced snipers. With his AW-50 aimed at the entrance, Mofuo confirmed that every guard there was already inside his range. He calculated that he could drop the lookout first, then pick off whoever came out to investigate one after another. But even with the rifle ready, he knew a victory that easy was probably an illusion, and the weight was starting to gnaw at him. Inside the compound, a massive monster towered over a dark-haired woman as Don Cordderero finally showed his true horror. The woman reminded herself that Don Cordderero was a vicious S-class monster, yet even he still had one weakness she could exploit. She realized that his opening only appeared while he was feeding. She remembered that Don Cordderero swallowed humans whole and digested them with terrifying speed. She understood that only in that brief instant did Don Corddero's defenses fall, leaving him exposed just before he reached for another victim. Nearby men mocked the idea, insisting that no ordinary army could ever bring down Lord Cordderero. Hearing that, the woman all of a sudden thought of Mofuo and recognized him as the pig-faced desk clerk orc. Then Don Cordderero opened his enormous mouth wide, exposing himself at the exact moment the chance finally arrived. The air seemed to freeze as everything hinged on what happened next. No one moved, and that silence only dragged the danger closer. The pressure kept building, with no one willing to break it. Even without a word, both sides felt the threat closing in. The room itself seemed to hold its breath under that strain. The silence stayed loaded, as if one mistake would unleash everything. Nothing changed, and somehow that made it worse. The standoff stretched on, still unresolved, while the pressure kept climbing. Every second refused to pass cleanly, forcing the moment to linger. And that crushing weight still refused to let go. Mofuo peered through the scope and admitted he had never seen a land creature like that before, struggling to process the sight. Don Cordderero lunged forward with cruel certainty, making it clear there was nowhere to run as the woman shrank back in fear. A sniper round tore into the monster's exposed eye, halting its advance for a split second and leaving the woman stunned. Mofuo all of a sudden realized Raisa was nowhere in sight, and the thought of protecting her group while fighting the boss made everything feel worse at once. Then, the second eye was hit as another precise shot ripped into Don Cordderero, and the woman could only stare as both weak points were destroyed. Watching that impossible accuracy, she began to wonder if Mofuo might actually be the strongest being on Earth. As the giant creature writhed above ground like a final boss, its sheer scale made the battlefield feel even more deadly. Mofuo reasoned that if Raisa and Erica had already reached the surface, then Don Cordderero really might be the one behind the bounty in this world. He then pieced together the truth that Don Cordderero was actually an underground monster, with most of its real body buried below and only part of it exposed. Elsewhere, it became clear that the caravan had been arranged around that exposed section, while panic spread and people were told to run. The woman spotted someone far in the distance and froze in shock, realizing Mofuo had been covering her from an absurd range. Erica Hardrock charged in at full speed, grabbed the woman, and snapped that there was no time left to hesitate. Looking through the rifle sight, Mofuo saw Erica Hardrock racing toward the boss monster and wondered what she was about to do. As Don Cordderero loomed over them, the woman called out to Fluffy and pushed him to prove he really was the strongest one there. The monster's damaged weak point split open even wider as the pressure on both eyes intensified, and the woman saw the attack starting to work. Seeing that, the woman burst into excited praise for Fluffy and felt her faith in him surge even higher. Erica Hardrock drove her sword into the monster's body, testing whether a direct strike could pierce its bizarre outer layer. She instantly felt the skin beneath the surface thrashing violently, as if something inside the monster had gone berserk. When the blade failed to sink deep enough, Erica Hardrock admitted that ordinary sword skill would never finish this. Don Corddero's huge eyes flared open again, and the creature lashed out as Erica Hardrock faced the renewed threat at point-blank range. Mofuo studied Don Cordderero through the scope, realized he had finally found the weak spot, and prepared to guide the attack. Inside the monster, Raisa fought for breath as she forced herself forward to the crushing pressure closing around her. Watching through the scope, Mofuo was stunned to realize that Raisa had burst out from inside Don Corddero's body. Raisa caught her breath and grimly realized she had nearly struck herself along with the monster in that dangerously close clash. Regaining focus, Raisa drew her sword and prepared to attack again without hesitation. Don Corddero's huge distorted eyes crowded the area as Erica Hardrock pressed close to its body, making the battlefield even more chaotic. Erica Hardrock shouted that there was nowhere left to hide, urged everyone to focus their attacks on the monster, and trusted Mofuo to cover them. The black-haired woman agreed at once and moved with Erica Hardrock's plan. She drove a powerful kick into the monster's body, turning their coordinated assault into a direct impact. Don Cordderero reeled as its torn eyes and writhing mouths shook violently, showing that their combined attack was finally breaking through. A bullet punched straight into one of Don Corddero's eyes, and the nearby armored figure jerked back in shock at the sudden hit. Mofuo coldly declared that anyone who targeted Raisa would die, whether monster or human. Raisa all of a sudden told the others to stop because she had noticed something was wrong. She said she had seen something moving deeper inside and carefully pulled the opening wider. As the slick cavity spread apart, Raisa froze in stunned disbelief at what had been hidden there. Inside the monster, a swollen human-like figure stared back in silence, leaving Raisa speechless. The trapped figure weakly recognized Erica Hardrock and remembered her, revealing a horrifying trace of the person still left inside Don Cordderero. Raisa stood shaken as another woman behind her nervously asked whether that thing was even human anymore, while the creature murmured about Eureka and called her delicious. Around the creature's inner mass, multiple ruined eye sockets and twisted mouths twitched across Don Corddero's body, exposing the monster's grotesque transformation. Looking at the fallen flesh and severed tendrils on the ground, someone concluded that the missing people were already gone. Mofuo said he was completely spent, while a shaken woman told Raisa that she could deal with her but she wanted. Erica Hardrock calmly said they had brought down Don Cordderero as planned and suggested splitting the bounty evenly. Raisa could only stare in stunned silence as Erica called her name. Mofuo reported that the remaining enemies had scattered like roaches, and Raisa called out to him. Relieved, Raisa thanked Mofuo and warmly praised the big fluffy fighter for saving them. Erica Hardrock cheerfully said they had all made it out alive and suggested going home for a long bath. Raisa insisted that she was completely exhausted, and Erica teased that she still looked perfectly fine to her. Later, the three rested together and tried to recover after the brutal fight. The scene shifted to a large stone building, marking their return to somewhere safer after the ordeal. A maid was startled when the group all of a sudden arrived, their rough condition impossible to miss. A maid stared in confusion at a strange object, and the group revealed it was Don Corddero's tongue. Erica Hardrock explained that they would claim bounties not just for Don Cordderero, but for all his lackeys too, since they had brought back proof from the victims. The people around them were stunned that only the three of them had wiped out the entire Cordderero family. Onlookers admitted there was no arguing with results and praised the town for finally being rid of that criminal gang. Some armed locals stepped forward, demanded to know who they were, and pressed them for an explanation. Erica Hardrock answered calmly that they were just a few fearless bounty hunters, while the others prepared a proper introduction. With Mofuo proudly raised between them, they dramatically declared themselves the Mofuo Army. As confused voices mocked the name, the narration marked that instant as the birth of the Mofuo Army and hinted that the whole world would hear of it. The interaction takes a turn neither of them expected. As Raisa trained with a wooden weapon, Erica Hardrock criticized her for relying on brute force, and Raisa pushed back by insisting she was still a proper swordswoman. Someone reluctantly admitted that they might have to head into town after all and finally get a proper explanation, while another voice made it clear the real conversation was only beginning. The scene shifted to a blacksmith shop, setting up their next stop in town. Inside, rows of materials and ammunition made the place feel strange to Raisa, leaving her thinking this fantasy world kept getting crazier. Mofuo calmly explained that bullets buried in dirt could still be cleaned and reused, adding that he could always dig up more from the mountain if needed. As Mofuo focused on bullet work and proudly described his accuracy in the quarry tunnel, the blacksmith noticed he had customers and walked over to see what they wanted. The blacksmith assumed the visitors wanted his services, but Erica Hardrock cut him off and clarified that they were there because Raisa needed maintenance on her sword. The blacksmith gladly accepted the request, praised his own reputation, and cheerfully took the weapon while admitting he had a weakness for confident people. After checking the blade, he right away said this would not do, and when asked why he could not simply sharpen it, he explained that the problem ran deeper. He told Raisa directly that the sword was too weak for her because its durability could not withstand the force of her swings. The blacksmith concluded that Raisa needed a better weapon and suggested a mithril sword as the obvious answer. Raisa was surprised mithril could even be found near here, like something out of a fantasy game, and the blacksmith quickly dampened that hope by saying this town had none. Before that could settle in, the blacksmith added that he had heard some had made it to a weapon shop in Central City. That only deepened the uncertainty, leaving the group wondering what kind of place Central City even was. After checking a map, they learned Central City was the kingdom's capital, about 150 walks away, while Mofuo remained completely useless. Erica Hardrock admitted she hated big cities, then muttered that mithril was probably far beyond her budget anyway. The dark-haired woman cut through the doubt and reminded everyone that Raisa still needed a new sword, no matter the cost. Erica Hardrock fired back that if it were up to her, she would buy one here instead of dragging themselves all the way there. The blacksmith replied right away that this town had no sword worthy of someone like Raisa. That single answer was all the dark-haired woman needed to decide the matter. She declared they were going to Central either way, and Erica Hardrock could only wear a reluctant look as the choice closed in on her. The dark-haired elf woman then asked Erica Hardrock if she already had something in mind, and Erica admitted that she did. The dark-haired elf woman pulled out a quest notice and revealed there was a perfect way to earn money on the road to Central. She added that only women could accept the job, and Erica Hardrock instantly said they could not afford to pass it up as she turned to Raisa. The group set out in a strange carriage bound for Central, joining a long convoy rumbling down the road. The huge carriage lurched and rattled forward, its machinery and wheels shaking without mercy. Crushed inside the overcrowded carriage, the passengers endured the miserable ride, while one of them groaned that standing all the way to Central like this was pure torture. One woman asked how long the trip would take, but another reminded her they had no money and no better option, making even the first-class passengers painful to look at. In the middle of the crowd, the dark-haired elf woman all of a sudden felt someone interfere from behind and tensely warned the others that something was wrong. She spun around in anger and accused the nearest young man, demanding to know what he thought he was doing while he stared back in confusion. Before anyone could clear it up, the disturbance came again from behind, proving the offender had never stopped. Leona all of a sudden realized part of her outfit had been disturbed, and her companion could only stare at her in shock and ask what was happening. Leona froze in confusion as an unseen force kept interfering with her clothes, leaving her flustered and on the edge of panic. She crossed her arms on instinct and tried to compose herself, but the nightmare only kept escalating. Leona said someone was tampering with her directly, and even she could barely grasp what was happening to her clothes. Her bespectacled companion checked herself in disbelief, while Leona watched with rising dread and realized this might not be happening to her alone. Then, the bespectacled woman panicked and said parts of her clothing had been affected too, proving the unseen harassment was spreading. Both women recoiled in fear and embarrassment as the packed passengers looked on, and Leona desperately tried to stop whatever was targeting them. Their panic hit a breaking point as Leona cried out in terror, while the other woman asked what was wrong after realizing something had gone horribly wrong. Leona snapped in frustration and demanded to know what this was, while the other woman begged for it to stop as no culprit showed himself. The bespectacled woman looked down in horror and realized even more of her clothing had come loose. The long bug carriage kept racing forward, and someone cried out in dread as it thundered toward town. The group arrived at the Hootaloo Inn, and the black-haired woman spotted it first and pointed it out with confidence. Mofuo was stunned by the strange vehicle, and the others realized he had never even heard of a bug carriage before. The black-haired woman explained that a bug carriage could carry far more people and cargo than a horse-drawn one, and move even faster. She proudly pointed out the passenger section and said that was why they would be riding in something that felt like a real second-class train car. She then called Mofuo toward the freight car, but he protested in disbelief and argued that a desk had no business being inside a passenger carriage. The women screamed as the ride jolted violently, and the sudden shock sent both of them straight into panic. Mofuo trembled and admitted the impact had nearly finished him off, still shaken by the brutal start. The black-haired woman steadied herself and warned that this was already worse than she had expected. She clenched her fist and declared a full pervert extermination, turning her anger into open resolve. Mofuo flatly asked if she expected him to serve as bait, and the black-haired woman answered as if that were the obvious plan. She explained that they could not draw swords inside the train, but insisted that meant nothing to a martial artist like her. With total confidence, the black-haired woman claimed this job was perfect for a hard-hitting female fighter like herself. Mofuo said nothing and could only reflect that her confidence truly never wavered. Inside the crowded train, the black-haired woman reasoned that with a carriage this packed, a troublemaker showing up was hardly surprising, and she added that with Rasa and Erica helping, catching the culprit should be easy, though even she still held a little back. Left trapped in the freight car, Mofuo sat chained up and admitted he had a terrible feeling about the whole plan. The noisy monkey in the next cage kept shrieking, and Mofuo nervously complained that the racket was driving him insane. As his unease kept growing, Mofuo decided he really could not stand staying there any longer. He lifted the chain and all of a sudden noticed an opening. Mofuo slipped free and resolved to get back to the passenger car somehow while the caged monkey kept screaming beside him. Inside the packed train, the dark-haired woman observed that the carriage was crowded enough for a culprit to hide with ease. She reasoned that the only women left from the earlier incident were still on board, which meant the pervert had to be there too. After checking around, Erica reported that all the women were in the rear car, but no one had actually seen the creep, making the hunt even harder. As they forced their way through the cramped train, they realized that in a space this tight, someone could cause trouble and disappear without a trace. The dark-haired woman wondered how they were supposed to catch anyone when everyone was packed so tightly they could barely move. Then she all of a sudden felt a suspicious tug at her waist, and the discomfort of the scene becomes impossible to ignore. Realizing the culprit had already moved, she went rigid with tension. But when she looked back, she saw only a dragon-like passenger and a calm young woman holding paper, leaving her shaken and confused. Stunned, she insisted that what she felt should have been impossible, and Erika right away pressed her about what was wrong. Erika's expression sharpened at once as she realized something serious had just happened. The long-haired woman jolted in horror as she realized part of her clothing had already been pulled out of place. The dark-haired woman stared in disbelief, instantly realizing the same thing was happening to her too. She twisted around in panic and tried to stop it, but whatever was targeting them moved too fast to catch. Both women froze as the impossible became undeniable, and shock turned to fear in an instant. The men packed around them noticed the commotion and reacted crudely, making it clear a hidden pervert was exploiting the crowd. The two women recoiled in humiliation and understood this was not some accident, but a deliberate attack unfolding in plain sight. Looking down, they saw even more of their clothing being disturbed and panicked over how to stop it before things got even worse. Above them, Mofuo watched from the luggage rack, confused by the chaos and struggling to understand what he was seeing. As the crowd kept reacting, the women realized with dread that the situation had already gotten badly out of hand before anyone could stop it. Mofuo jolted in alarm and decided this crisis needed a drastic answer right away. Mofuo stared at the strange vehicle in sudden realization and understood with alarm that his own ability was the only thing he could use to stop the crisis.